any person who's a fan of celebrity gossip magazines or blogs understands how precarious celebrity marriages have become nowadays. Another week, another split, another cover story. However, not all celebrity couples are destined to break up. As the godfather of contemporary African gospel music, Pastor Pete Odera, a musician and now pastor of Waterbrook Church, is largely considered a pioneer in the gospel music scene. His beginning can be traced back to the 1980s as he formed a gospel band known as Triumph, and later on the Quartet Heart, that went on to be the most popular group in East Africa. He has shown the ropes to various local musicians like Eric Wainaina and shared the stage with great international artists such as Ron Kenoly, Donnie McClurkin, CeCe Winans, among others. Besides all these accomplishments and fame, Pastor Pete Odera has 2 daughters and a wife, Christine Rose, with whom they have stayed for 20 years in marriage. They share with us their happy ever after and their secret to staying this long in marriage.
Whereas being a musician is an important job, just like being a bank manager. The connection that the musician has with his audience is a little different. They feel they own him. You know, he gets into their lives in that way. I would like for the young ladies potentially marrying an artist to recognize that doesn't change, or that doesn't make your relationship to him less, diminish. Yeah. Exactly. It doesn't diminish this relationship that you have with him, and that this one is important as well. Build this one, build this relationship that you have, you and him, as you allow for him and cheer him on when he goes to do his other thing.
At just the age of 4, Pastor Pete Odera began to write simple songs and eventually recorded his first solo piece at the age of 9 years. It was at this tender age that his desire to become a musician was sure, and he drew his inspiration from his now deceased uncle, Golden Ominde, who headed the band Black Savage. Pastor Pete helped to form 2 of the leading and pioneering contemporary groups, Triumph, and later on the Quartet Heart, and went on to be the most popular group in East Africa.
When I was about to end my college years, I recorded my first solo album and released it. It was called Say Yes. It was an amazing time for me, because at that time we didn't have CDs. All we had was compact cassettes. And I remember coming home and my dad saw all these stack of tapes, and he said, that's really good, son. I mean, you've done good. Sometimes I can't even listen to that music. It was, but for the time, it was ahead of its time. Yeah. I began getting involved in music through the church. And even though I used to write a couple of love songs and what have you, I never really recorded them. I think I've only recorded one. And it's because I sang that on my wedding day. I hadn't gone to music school. I play 4 different instruments and I sing as well. So I didn't go to music school. I taught myself how to play drums, taught myself how to play guitar, taught myself how to play bass, taught myself how to play lead guitar, taught myself keyboards, taught myself how to sing. I didn't realize how incredibly unique that was until I started interacting with people who had achieved things. And somebody turned to me, and it's funny, American Voices came to my life, and when the Americans, you taught yourself all these things? That's amazing, and then I began to realize that it was an amazing journey. That to be at the level of musicianship that I was, and to have the kind of articulation that I have was not usual, and I began to appreciate it more.
Pastor Pete sang in an era of pre-FM radio stations. There was only one TV station, and the internet was still a strange phenomenon. While the young people appreciated his music, some people were not exposed to the hip-hop music that Pastor Pete and his band introduced into gospel music. Pastor Pete introduced a new culture of having dreadlocks. They wore studs, making the church and parents disagree with what they stood for. Christian churches and school fellowships also banned them from using club beats for a gospel song, labeling them as devil worshippers.
The music industry, however, I think at the time when I started, was not prepared for that kind of sophistication. Certainly the church was not. And the church that I was in, even though it was one of the top churches in the city, forward-thinking, very modern, were not ready. We're not ready for the kind of thing that we're going to do, because culturally we were different. Guys with earrings, we had earrings on, we had braids on. If you see some of the old pictures, you'd say, "What?" So here was this guy with studs, and I wore many colors, and I had jewelry on, and I had my hair in braids, and so this guy is a Christian. Now when you see some of these kids now, the younger guys now, and it's normal when they show up on TV, and it looks normal. You have guys with dreads and braids in church, and it's normal. It was completely abnormal in our day, and it was not easy.
It was during one of his singing tours at Baraton University that he met his wife, Christine Rose. However, it took 5 years after this event to meet her again. Pastor Pete had gone to the bank to do a transaction back in the day when there were no ATMs or other applications that eased the bank processes. Little did he know that his life was about to change forever.
So while I was there, the customer service manager was a mutual friend. So Dorothy introduced us and said, "Hey Pete, this is Christine. Christine, this is, a formal introduction." And I remember she was wearing a cream blouse. I remember black skirt, knee-length skirt, and black pumps. And she, professional-looking lady. She was working for Kenya Airways at the time, at the commercial office, and she had come across town, walked across from Barclays Plaza to Kimathi Street. To this day, she has not told me what she was doing or what it was in particular. I've given full disclosure of exactly what it was that I was doing. But again, like I said, I was very focused, and I understood the place that I had. I understood that I wanted to be married. I had just recently come out of a relationship that didn't work. Maybe about a year and a half before that. And so I was just pacing myself and saying, I'm not really interested in getting into a serious. I don't want to delve too deep into a relationship, because number one, it'll ruin my focus. Number two, I had a previous experience with somebody else, and we were supposed to get married, and that didn't work out. Anyway,
I think it probably was the closest branch to where I was at the time. And they had an ATM thing inside the banking hall.
Oh, that's right.
You remember?
Yeah.
The Kimathi branch years ago. And so that's why I was there. I needed some money. And my friend Dorothy worked there. And so every time I walked into the bank, of course, I'd say hi to her, because, the ATM was here, her desk was here. And so we, started to chat. Of course, I knew who he was, famous musician and all of that,
In subsequent weeks, these two lovebirds kept meeting coincidentally almost daily on the bus, because apparently Pastor Pete's carpool that took him to town had stopped working. These meetings drew them closer, and they became great friends. Christine was more interested in a friendship with Pete than anything else, as she was tired of games and desired all but to settle down with an honest man. On the other hand, Dr. Pete was at the pioneering stage of making the gospel industry, and this meant that he had no time to date or be with a woman who wasn't meant for him.
I was very focused. I was producing. I was doing my own music. I was producing Wahoo and the rap community at the time. I was producing a radio show called Coca-Cola Radio Show at the time. I was just busy. There was just too much to do. I was attending Bible school as well. So it was, my life was just full. And at that time, Capital had these bougie kids things. All these kids were, just really not nice. Let me just say that. They were totally indisciplined. She handled it so nicely. Yeah. She handled it so gracefully. I'm not a hair out of place, and it was just fantastic. I said, yeah, she could work. The whole idea that they were gonna be with a very serious, very committed Christian guy. The fact that they were going to be in the limelight. The fact that they were going to be. This wasn't just a cool musician. This is a guy who's committed to his call. This is a guy who prays. This is a guy who, this is kind of serious and maybe not. And I don't think she was intimidated by that.
It became a friendship very quickly. Yeah. And so I think then Pete was my friend before anything else ever happened.
Her genuine love for children, her intelligence, and her sophistication made Pastor Pete realize that Christine was the woman that he was destined to be with. Hence, one day, Dr. Pete gathered up courage and proposed to her during a phone conversation on her father's landline. This was a confusing moment to Christine, as she had to choose between the man she loved and her dream of having a career.
I was 27 years old. I think really just been working for a couple of years since college.
Right.
Dreaming about a career, dreaming about traveling, dreaming about becoming big, great, whatever that was for me at the time. I recall that I suddenly felt as if that all of that would stop. What? I need to travel, I need to grow, I need to build my career, I need to do all this stuff. And I was suddenly very, very afraid. On one end of losing all of this, but on the other end of saying no and losing my friend, who, remember I mentioned, initially was my friend. Mm-hmm. He really, literally had become my best friend. So yes, I hung up the phone. I said, you have to give me some time. And so I hung up the phone. And I recall going into my bedroom, and I think my sister wasn't there at the time. We shared a bedroom, and I shut the door, and I was by myself. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what is all this? What's going to happen? It seems wrong. Not wrong, it seems like I have to choose. Immediately I said, what do I do? I remember a scripture coming to my mind. And it was, and as almost as audibly as if somebody said it right there in the room, and it said, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Now, you must understand that I was raised Anglican. I was not accustomed to hearing God, let alone audibly. So I heard this, and immediately I heard, trust in the Lord with all your heart. I knew that it was okay. And so I went back and I called him. I think I called you back.
Yeah.
And I said yes.
I made up for it later. At year 10 and year 12, I tried my best. I really tried my best because things had improved a little bit. I think I remember going down, but when I look at the pictures, we were both standing. So I don't know, but I do know that it made
very romantic.
Yeah, it made it into the newspapers.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I remember.
Oh my gosh, I have no recollection of the detail.
Yeah.
The couple got married 1 year later after they met on December 13th, 1997. 10 years later, Pastor Pete did a surprise anniversary celebration to compensate for the supposedly cheap engagement ring that he had bought her. She still has kept the ring for its sentimental value.
I said to her, I'm going to take you out to dinner. So this is going to be special. I'll take you out to special dinner. So we went to the Nairobi Serena Hotel. And it was supposed to just be dinner. What she didn't know was that I had planned. Of course, now our kids were, how old were they? They were small. Not knowing that I had also colluded. One of my good friends, Pastor Julian, his sister worked there, so I talked to her and the F&B. I talked to all the managers. I said, this is 10th anniversary. And so we got a really good deal at the hotel. I had budgeted, and then I found out that I ran out of budget, and they said, you're such a great client of ours, and they gave us a suite. So we came and we arranged big love heart rose petals. My girls knew about this story, but now they had to keep quiet. And so my daughters knew the story. My sister-in-law knew the story because she was supposed to bring the girls at a certain time, so we had to hide them. And so,
I'm telling you.
and so it worked out very nicely. And so I said to her, I got to go to the washroom. Just a minute, I'll go. So she was sitting by herself, just smiling to herself, and wondering, where's this guy? I mean, I was taking long. But what I was doing is I was setting it up. I went to the room now. I said, okay, girls, you ready? So I dressed them up in these really fancy silver white dresses. And they came into the restaurant with the rose petals. And the music started playing. And so she's seeing these kids come and says, those look like my children. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? And then she heard the voice singing, one look in your eye, and I see. And I mean, the entire restaurant just froze. There were women crying. There were other guests. It's embarrassing. And there were ladies crying. Something had happened to the ring. This old ring, it had zircons in it, and they had fallen out. Thankfully. So I said, let me go and see if I can get this ring fixed for you. So I took it, and it just happened at the right time because I was saying, what is her ring size? My plan was to buy her a new ring. So I got a second ring that matched. He just did a special design that matched the ring. And so now the ring fits into the thing, and I got 5 diamonds on this other one, got a real one on that, and just fixed it so that it worked with the wedding band, the engagement ring, and the new 10th anniversary ring worked together. It was just perfect.
Pastor Pete and Christine's marriage has weathered major storms. Just 3 months after their nuptials, Christine received the devastating news that her father had passed on. And if that was not enough, their first daughter, Michaela, became sick, something that brought a strain in their finances and strengthened their faith in God.
I guess at a point like that, then you really must just trust God. And there's nothing really that you can do. Yes, you are the pastor. Yes, you are the one who talks about faith and having faith, and God will come through, and He will heal, and He desires that we're okay. But this is the situation, and so you really just. I think my experience was you walk it a day at a time.
Yeah. Faith for me isn't that thing that you have some intellectual cognizance of. Faith is something that you live. Will the child live? And I remember praying distinctly that day. I was lying on the floor and saying, what more do you want from me? What more do you? I've given you I've given you my life, all my life. I've served you from my youth. I've given you. What more do you want? And if you want this child, take her. But I would rather that I keep her, because she needs to live out her dreams. And I sort of like I was arguing with God, and then remember one of my friends was Carol at the time coming up to me and saying, "Don't worry, she's going to be all right. We've prayed." And sure enough, she turned around, and after that season, it was a complete turnaround. And the thing is, you have to live it in public. You know, you have to live it. And I think it was Pastor Alan or Pastor Kathy who said to me, I think it was Dr. Mengistu, one of them, who said, "You preach this thing, so now you have to live it."
Luckily, their daughter became better, and Christine got a new job, which assisted her in taking care of their expenses. But while this job was a blessing, it apparently brought trouble in their marriage. Christine worked for long hours, which, in Pastor Pete's own words, took the energy out of their marriage. For Christine, this experience taught her that roles can change and that her husband's contribution in taking care of their children was still important.
For a long time, our girls would say, I'm having a conversation with them, I've gone out with them, and they'll start to say, "Hey, Dad," "No, Mom," because they're so accustomed to spending time with Daddy. Even now, I hear from people saying, "Wow, your girls have such a relationship with their dad. It's admirable. People envy it."
That's
and
not
I
something money
appreciate
can buy.
that. That's something money cannot
I think
buy.
the trade-off was worth it, if you think about it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of families that just don't have that, unfortunately.
It's an African thing. We expect that, the African man is going to be like this. I change the diapers, wash the girls, took them, do their hair, what have you. And it was unusual. I remember going to conferences where I'd be the singer or the preacher, and I'm going with my girls while my wife was at work. And I know at the back of some people's minds, Connie, where's his wife? Yeah. But I said, well, look, if these were boys, they'd say, okay, hey, this is a good dad. But now that my girls are now teenagers, I can see that the investment was worth it. It was worth that. I wouldn't trade that thing. I wouldn't, because if I worked in the corporate world, I would have been absent, to give them the kind of quality of life that they needed. And then having that kind of a relationship, now I'm finding that it's easier for us to talk. When I know that I meet with some of their friends who say, "Who's that?" And he says, "That's my dad." I say, "No, that's your brother." Your dad is so cool, because we have a cool relationship, and I think that's important. At the same time, I think learning about disciplining the kids was important for us, so that we understood this is the kind of discipline regimen that we want our kids to go through. We need our kids disciplined like this, so that we were agreed on that. And I tell my kids, don't drive your mom crazy, because when you guys go, I'm going to have to live with this woman. And so I say to them, no, you can't disrespect your mom. You can't drive her crazy. If you disrespect her, it's not on, because respect is something that you've got to give. But secondly, she can't be crazy, and that's self-interest. I'm working in self-interest there. I'm saying, you know what? I am not going to live with a crazy lady in the last years of my life. I'm not going to do that. So that's just insurance.
Yeah.
Having gone through a difficult path as one of the pioneers in the Kenyan gospel music scene, Pastor Pete apparently felt that God was calling him to minister to the young generation. He founded the Waterbrook Church, a youth ministry established to reach to the urban youth in Africa. As Christine nostalgically recalls, this was a shock to her, as she had never expected nor desired to be a pastor's wife.
When I married him, I didn't expect him to be a pastor. I expected that he was going to be in music, and at the time that we were courting and getting married, he was in advertising, doing a bit of advertising work here and there. What the norm is, typically in Kenya, often in Kenya, when there's a pastor, his wife is a pastor as well. I started to feel the pressure, thinking, oh my gosh, maybe he expects me to be a pastor as well. We talked about it with our pastors at the time. And I remember Pastor Alan saying, "Look, Rose, Pastor Kathy is not a pastor because I am a pastor. Pastor Kathy is called to be a pastor." And that freed me, you know. I appreciate that they were that candid and that open with us, and you know, just they understood that people are called in certain places, other people are not.
To top it up, Pastor Pete's association with secular artists had apparently been questioned. While some think it's okay, others believe that as a pastor, he should shun secular artists away and stick to the Christian circle.
We share, have come into my life and I've become such a part of their life where, you know, because we have kids, they can come and ask me, what do you do about? You know, you have girls, what do you do about? What's the right school to go to? What's the right channel to take? That's the stuff we talk about. You know, we talk about being parents. We talk about, you know, life, you know. Big Ted, these are guys who we grew up with. Even though I may not work very closely with them on the music and on whatever it is that they're doing, I interact with them. It is inevitable, and we, you know, the nature of this thing is that a lot of the guys in the music business respect me, not just gospel artists. I mean, across the board, they have very high regard for me. Because of my professional ethic, my consistency. This is stuff that they respect. They know that I'm not in it just for the money. I think it's a good thing that a DJ can call and say, I need to talk. A DJ who plays in clubs and pubs and can call and say, man, I'm going nuts, help me. You know, I'm going through something, pray for me. If I can't do that, then there's no witness. There's nothing I can, you know, who's going to help? Who's going to help the DJ? I was saying to somebody just yesterday that Suzanne Gashukia, without her, I would not be where I am today. But you never call her a gospel music producer. But they gave us a break. If it wasn't for Suzanne, we would never have had a break. And they're the ones who produced our first gospel album as Heart. And so without them, and this is how the industry works. This is how it works. And God is funny. He'll use funny guys. I think those are the kind of sacrifices that I say, am I going to now turn around and say that I'll never talk to these guys because they are not gospel or Christian? Or they'll invite me over and say, come, you know, and we're meeting at this pub, you know, so I'm there, they're drinking their beer, I have my soda and everything, and, you know, and we'll talk. I think it is important for us to have genuine relationships, and that's what I like to be, a genuine person.
Pastor Pete is thankful that he is married, and this has assisted him stay grounded, both in ministry and in his celebrity life.
The industry is another animal where that is concerned. As soon as you're a musician, you know, the girls,
you're very attractive.
You're attractive. Yeah, you're attractive. I mean, as soon as you open your mouth, the girls saying, oh. And, and they're looking at your left hand and saying, he's married. In a city like ours, in the world that we're in these days, you know, some of them don't even look at, they say, oh, in fact, I'm glad he's married. So, you know, we understand that this is, you know, we have an understanding. There's no long-term commitment. This is a faithful guy. We'll just have an understanding. That can get dicey sometimes, and you have to know how to walk around that. And so it's important to have somebody who's strong and not insecure. I've had friends who've been insecure, who have insecure wives or insecure husbands because they the public eye. And some of my musician friends are not necessarily gospel musicians, and we've had to, you know, talk with them and say, hey, you know, surround each other, secure each other's, just be sure. And so these are the things that have kept me. They've kept me because I sometimes have to remind myself, remember who you are. Remember who you are. People are looking up to you. Sometimes I can be away 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks at a go. And it can be lonely because, man, different hotel every couple of days, different hotel. You fly to another city, a different hotel, fly to another city, you're disoriented. You look around and say, where am I? Where am I? Where am I? And so it's just important to have these things to keep you grounded. I know people say, but you're a man of God. I am. The first thing is that I'm a man of God. That man business is real stuff. And if you ever forget that you're a real man, that you're a real man with real blood, your attention will be, God will snap your attention real quick and remind you that you're a full-blooded man. Because in will come that girl with the smile just like hers, and she's less conservative. She's got a dress that goes all the way down to Cape Town, and she comes and says, "I want prayers, Pastor."
Pray for me.
And sometimes she's just genuine. That's what she wants. She just wants prayer. Yeah. She's not after anything else.
Yeah.
And God reminds you, remember, you're a man. And this is something that I think I've grown to realize, that I can hurt this girl in a way that nobody else can. So I have to be careful, because nobody else has come into the space that I've been in, and vice versa. And so she can hurt me in a way that is sometimes, unless by the grace of God, irreparable.
Being one of the pioneers in the Kenyan music industry and starting a church made the celebrity couple experience financial difficulties, and they share with us how they managed to handle this sensitive issue that has affected many marriages.
Because you were pastoring and initially not even taking an income from the ministry, I would call the money question a challenge for me. I think particularly because I grew up in a home where both my parents worked, but my dad took care of a lot of the things that we needed.
Yeah, most of the things.
Yeah. There was never a time, I remember that there was never a time in our lives, all of us, all six of us, that we were sent away from school for not having school fees. That was an obvious thing for me, because there were children at our schools that would get sent home for not having school fees. I think it sort of just stayed in my mind that Daddy took care of things. I had expectations, even though I knew that he was a musician, that he had jobs on occasion in advertising relating to music. I still had those expectations. My job wasn't paying very well at the time that we met, but it was enough. But still, I wanted for his income to be more than mine.
Yes. And I came from a family where, she said that she cannot recall when they were ever sent home.
We were never sent
ever. I cannot recall when we were never. I remember we were sent home. I was sent home often. My high school life, it was a struggle. It was a struggle to pay bills. I remember the power was disconnected, phone was disconnected, water was disconnected. So even though we lived close to each other, the distance could not have been greater.
Pastor Pete has several achievements to his name. He is the co-founder of the Kisima Awards, a double Kenya Festival Award winner, a Lifetime Achievement Groove Award nominee, and the 2008 winner of the Peace Award, along with Wakenya Pamoja, a foundation he co-founded. He has toured extensively, including in his native country, Kenya, and has been very well received by the myriad audiences in those nations. He was specially invited by the National Assembly to minister at the inaugural National Prayer Breakfast in Nairobi, where the then President of Kenya, Honorable Mwai Kibaki, was the guest of honor. Furthermore, he has performed at the UNEP headquarters for various dignitaries. To say the least, Pastor Pete is a much accomplished artist. They have had to learn as a family to handle their celebrity status, and for Pastor Pete, this is where he has learned to be grounded and focused.
I don't think I was ever taken up by the stardom. And if I was, she would remind me real quick. Because I'd be at a concert and I'd say things like, hey, you can't believe who I was. We were with today. And she'd say, okay, please, on your way back, please bring some milk. Musicians see things in a very different way. You can tell them something, they're the ones who will spot the crooks immediately, because the artistic type a lot more perceptive. They say, but this is not true. This one is kind of fake. And so I've had to learn how to balance the eccentricity of what I do and the people that I hang around with the normal life. And now that the expectations that people have, you'd be in the supermarket and someone says, oh, hi, oh, I love your music, you're so amazing, let's take a selfie and whatever, and picture and thing. And you have to be gracious. You have to be gracious because they don't see you as dad, they don't see you as honey, they don't see you as son, they see you as, this is our star. And so for a long period of time, at the beginning, Rose had to get used to the fact that I belong to them. I belong to them. When I come back home, and I have to just quickly just switch and come back home, and I don't belong to them anymore. I belong to the family. When you're in front of you're on a huge global, 100 million people are watching you on TV, and so you have to know how to really just behave yourself. Have any trophies here? There's no trophies. There's no the just stuff that I play every day. I play the guitars. I try and play every day. The trophies are in the office. Honorary doctorate. That's I can put on that hat. When I come home, I just want this space to sit here on this chair and say, okay, let's listen to Bob James and Eric Clue, which is what you guys heard when you came. And I want to just listen to quiet music. Jimmy Lulu. I want to listen to Jonathan Butler. I just staki kelele mingi. I don't want a lot of noise. And my girls know. They can already tell that, okay, daddy's in quiet mode. So let's keep it down. Stay in our room. And then the beautiful thing about it is that she can sense it and just says, I'll just let him be. She doesn't even come and say, okay, I'm just going to let you be now for a couple of hours. She just lets me be. Sometimes it takes a day or two because, I've been on the road, I've been out there, I've been, preaching is hard work. I'm trying to stay biblical. I'm trying to, because I'm talking to intelligent people. That's a tough thing. I have a newfound respect and regard for some of the musicians who are pastors who are musicians, some of whom I met, Donnie McClurkin, and so on, who are at the top of, this is the top of their game. How do they do it? These are guys who, Sunday morning, they are doing 2 services. Then after the second service is done, they go straight to the airport to be at, concert in the evening. The next morning, they're doing a radio show. The next afternoon, they're in a TV show. It can be quite demanding. And I know being like that, when we're doing TV shows and what's that thing, Exodus to Stardom.
Pastor Pete and his wife have had to learn to find ways to ensure that their children stay balanced in the midst of their father's fame. As they narrate, their children too are artistic. And for Mrs. Odera, she has had to learn to handle her husband's fame and also preserve the memory of who he is to their children.
In raising the girls, I've tried the best that I can to be deliberate in helping them understand who their dad is, from that angle. Whereas they knew his music and they know his music, because remember, like we said, they spent a lot of time with him in their earlier years. They know his music. I remind them I try to remind them that this is who daddy is. I want for them to know that to recognize the importance of what their dad is doing and who their dad is. He's not just daddy, and the impact, I think, that he's had on the industry. They need to appreciate that. Obviously, they're younger, now in their teens, and as one grows or matures, they'll appreciate it more for themselves. But that is the deliberate part that I, try to play. Be involved.
Yeah.
Be involved in his outside life
Yeah.
as best you can, but build this one. Be deliberate about building your own relationship. And I think that's important even if you're, like I said, the bank manager, or if you're the president of the United States, or if you're, whatever.
Yeah. I think the converse is also important, because I know many ladies who are musicians and are married.
Yeah.
And so their husbands sort of in the background. And I saw this epitomized in CeCe Winans' life, in Nina and Jeroge's life. Some of these girls are just amazing out there, and then they go home. They go home to a husband. And when I met their husbands, I said, this is amazing. The husbands are super supportive.
Yeah.
And understand just what my wife has just said, is that to the audience, they're not Mrs. whoever. To the audience, they're this girl and we own her. And so you got to give your wife to the audience. But then she also has to remember when she comes home, she's Mrs. So-and-so. And I saw this happen that with CeCe Winans was Mrs. Alvin Love when she came home. And that to me was a changing moment, because we didn't meet her. I didn't see her now on stage. We've been in concert. We've done a concert together in North Carolina. But now I'm at their home, and I'm seeing something very different. And to me that was important, because then I could see this relationship close and how gracious she was. And I found that many of these women who are out there shining, their husbands don't talk much. They tend to be quiet, and but super supportive and are super proud.
West Africa, get up, everybody say, get up, everybody, get up, everybody. All right, get up.
Young single people, I say to them that socialize and don't specialize. When you socialize, what tends to happen is how people are. And so, if you have 5 guys and you've gone to somebody's house, you can see how they are in their home. And I think that parents, relatives, people who aren't so perturbed when you see 5 people coming to visit your daughter or your son, they won't ask you 100 questions. Okay, these days, some aunties still ask, which one is it? But, 4 or 5 people in the house, there's less opportunity also for something to go wrong. We hear a lot about date rape. We hear a lot of people who get into premarital sexual situations, and it becomes very difficult to then say, but you went, you went, you took yourself, and it becomes difficult to prove. And I think those situations are much easier to avoid when you do this group thing.
I hear people say, oh, marriage is hard, marriage is hard. I don't think I would just categorize it and call it hard. Okay. Being married is part of life. And the difficult moments are part of life. But the lovely, fun, happy moments are part of life as well. Don't focus on the difficulties. Focus on living.
Yeah.
Like we said, day at a time.
Marriage is hard when you don't know what to do. It's like driving. If you don't know how to drive, you can't.
Yeah.
And so it becomes difficult if no one has ever taught you how to drive. How are you going to drive? You sit there and you say, okay, so what do we do next? I don't know. Push this button, do this. And this is what many people I found are doing. They're struggling because they don't know what to do. And I suppose that that's what it is.